moving on to the next slide, we're now going to look at the exam tips, tricks, and skills. So that essentially concludes the content component of today's lecture. I hope that everything was fairly clear and allowed you to gain a little bit more of a more of an understanding of the content involved and how to go about it. So now let's go through the exam tips, tricks, and skills. So, um, before we do that, I did want to go through a bit of an overview of the 2023-2024 budget. So, there is this idea of the delivering cost of living relief. So these are like some of the main concepts that I just screenshotted from the budget.gov.au website, just as some of the main features that have made themselves onto the headlines of the budget articles. So delivering cost of living relief. We know that there is a cost of living crisis in Australia. Inflation is very high. We can see those pressures, and so the government is aiming to try and reduce some of the cost of living pressures. The growing the economy, so modernizing our economy and maximizing our skills. So a lot of criticism that Australia has been getting is this idea that they don't have an export base that is very diverse. They have a very narrow export base, so they want to try and vary that export base to have more things, especially with people becoming a lot more environmentally aware, and they want to try and focus on environmental sustainability. And one of the main income earners in Australia is the mining industry. So to move away from that and to have other sources of growth is something on the agenda for Australia and something that they should be addressing, which they are because it's in the budget. Strengthening the budget, so putting the budget on a stronger foundation to make Australia more resilient and secure. Resilient, secure, to bounce back from all of the recent changes in the budget. You know, we had the huge factor of COVID-19 that played a huge role, things like that we want to try and improve as much as we can. Strengthening Medicare, so to ensure Australians can get the primary health care that they need. Right? So Medicare, the health system, is something that Australia really wants to focus on improving, and making sure that all Australians have access to care, medical care. And finally, broadening opportunity, so advancing equality and extending opportunity across the country. There we go. So those are some of the things that the budget has tried to, focus on and improve and spent a bit of money on. If you would, obviously, this is not sufficient as an understanding of the budget. This is just like a bit of an overview. If you would like more information, obviously, just go onto the budget website, have a look, make notes of some of the investment figures, what we've invested in different things. They will come in really handy when you look at your notes later on in the year. Let's go through some exam prep tips. So, first of all, find your best study method. So, I preferred learning by reading and writing my notes. Something else I also did was I would have like slides with my notes transferred onto the slides as well, and I would teach myself those slides closer to revision and exam time so that I would be like sort of have a greater understanding of the content. Right? So some people also prefer to do practice papers, which is key, like something that I also did, and I would highly recommend that you do practice papers. And then not only do you just do the question, but also go to the marking guidelines, which are available on the NESA website. Look at the marking guidelines, compare your answer, see what you would give yourself, and then improve your answer if it's not full marks, and then sort of go back and forth. If there are certain questions you don't understand, and even after looking at the guidelines you don't understand, go and ask your teacher. They are there to help you. Ask your tutor as well. You can ask your friends as well, whoever it is. Another thing that is really important, and something that I really push for my students to focus on, is this idea of understanding over memorizing. So make an effort to think deeply about the content that you learn rather than just memorizing it, because the HSC examiners are really focused on people, and they are going to make the exam in a way to reward people that have understood the content. right? So memorizing can only take you so far, right? If you understand the content, you can add in your own analysis. You can go further. You can develop your own opinion, your own judgment, which are all things that you'll see in some of the HSC verbs that you actually need to get the highest mark, right? So how can you do this? You can think deeply about the content that you learned. So actually go in and say, actually, what does this mean? How do I go about this? Like, look at real life examples. That really helps. Look at news articles related to exchange rates, related to the GFC, to the COVID, the stimulus packages, monetary policy, fiscal policy. That will help you form your own judgments. That will help you actually understand rather than just memorize whatever the textbook is saying. And then discuss in class, like engage in discussion. If your class is having discussions like about different things, engage in it. Ask questions, right? Because those things can really help you gain a better understanding of the content. Collate important stats in a form easy to memorize as well, because there are things that you will need to memorize, but I'm just saying you would also need to understand it. So when you are doing that memorizing component, have like a graphic or a doc or something with like all of the stats that you've learned that are there, easy to access, so that you can go back to them and just make sure that you do know them. Become familiar with your syllabus. Write essay plans, right? Those are the things that will get you through. Your HSC examiners are making your exam by looking at the syllabus. So it's only, only obvious that you would do the same when you're making your notes and you're going through practice questions to make sure that you understand the syllabus and everything in it. And if you don't, ask questions, talk to your teacher, like get it sorted, you know what I mean? Write essay plans as well. So making sure you have those essay plans is really important, because I guess I'm fully aware that not everybody would have free time to write an essay every few days, because it takes a bit of time and prep. But if you can write essay plans, so just like have a question and then do, okay, what would I write briefly in my intro, dot points, and then dot points of what I would put into each paragraph, and then every few days or every week or something, have at least one essay that you write out to help you get into the zone to memorize and to effectively learn, and so that you're invincible in the exam. Essay tips. So always plan out your essay. Don't just go in blindly without knowing anything, like without making some sort of an effective plan. Complex sentences aren't rewarded, so you can keep it simple, but just make sure that your point is making sense, which sometimes in complex sentences it can get a little bit foggy. Clarity and use of syllabus terminology is quite important. So one of the things that is really important is you use terminology that's related to economics or economic specific terminology. Graphs are so important. Like if there are graphs related to the topic that you're writing about, make sure you include them and you take the time to learn them, because they will honestly help you out so much. Succinct but no slang, right? You want to make sure that your answers are succinct, make sense to the point, but avoid slang, because it is still an essay. You still want to be formal. Theory versus fact. So words like may, might, could, theoretically, this ideas of counter arguments as well. So 70% argue for, 30% argue against. So think about it. Like think about where you stand or what your stance is in that essay question, and then go from there. So however, like you can have like a however statement, and that can help like sort of differentiate and have those two sides there. No NESA verb definitions, please. Like literally just type into NESA verb glossary, HSC verbs glossary. It will come up right away. Make sure you know the definitions of the key terms, like assess, analyze, what that involves, like discuss. Discuss, for example, you're talking about advantages, disadvantages. Making sure you know those things so you know how to effectively answer the question is quite important. Stats. So must not just state, you want to analyze. So treat like a quote from English. So follow like the Peel method, for example, or whatever method you use. And wide reading quotes. So do readings and then have a wide reading quotes in there as well. It will show that you've done additional work, and it will show the marker you've gone above and beyond in comparison to your classmates, and so you can get a better mark. But yeah, those are some of the tips for essays. Also, another thing is like for one of the essays, you have a stimulus. Some students just decide to ignore the stimulus. Don't do that. Make sure that your stimulus is in your response. Make sure you're analyzing it, you're making reference to it. How to pick the right essay question. So, read the essay question first, right, in reading time, and then you want to read the rest of the paper. So, you want to choose which essay question you want to do, and then as soon as writing time starts, like write out your plan because you may end up forgetting some of that information when you come back to it at the end if you write the essay at the end. For some people, they feel more confident in certain areas, so they start by thinking about which area you feel the most confident doing. Right, for me, I would always read the essays first, and then when writing time would start, I would write down a quick plan for which essay questions I wanted to do, and then have a quick plan for it, and then I would go start from the beginning, do my multiple choice, do my short answers, and then leave as much time as possible for the essays. Then consider which can you brainstorm the most ideas for, which do you know more stats about, which do you find more interesting, like when you're thinking about which question to do, which lends itself more towards a contemporary economic climate, which do you think you would like do quicker or easier. Like for me, for one of my assessments, we had a specific economic issue allocated to us, and then in the exam, so my economic issue that I was allocated was environmental sustainability. So so I already felt very confident because I had to present to the class about environmental sustainability. So in the exam, when one of the questions were related to environmental sustainability, I immediately chose that one because I was very confident with it. I knew stats about it. I found it very interesting and I had a lot of ideas for it. So for me, that one was easier. So that's what I mean when I say think about these things. Band 6, so which relies less on strict theory and more on analysis, could also be something that you could go off of. Tips to integrate stimuli. So highlight the keywords from the syllabus. Highlight any information that directly references a specific economic event, specific organization, forum, whatever it is. Those things can be really important in helping you achieve success. Is the stimulus dated? So this could hint at about which contemporary economic stats you will need to include in your response. Right? So when you have graphs, they're dated, look at that. Treat the stimulus like quotes in English. Don't ignore them. They are so key to success in the essay. Use them to back up your response, your theory. Answer questions more directly and mention the content more relevant to what the marker is looking for. You want to make sure that you're able to get and pull as many marks as you can. Where is the syllabus, the stimulus from? So you want to look down the bottom, it will have the reference down there as well. Sometimes you'll even have quotes as a part of the stimulus, so make reference to those quotes as well. But yeah, that is